That took him in the... Is a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. Member FDIC, our amazing partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. Kent Swanson here with Matthew Lane on a Monday. Maddie, how are we doing?
You know, we're doing pretty good. I like the new intro on this show. It's real quick and to the point. Tucker can just cut us off when we're just bantering and just send us right into the show perfectly. And I can just see you still chitter chattering and this little small screen, and you're just cut off. It's great. No, I mean, I'm generally doing, I'm doing pretty good today. I'm feeling pretty good. We're getting a little bit closer and closer to the draft. It feels like it's a long way away, but we're getting closer.
You finished your last write-ups for the KCSN draft guide today.
I did in fact do that today. I finished up my last couple running backs, couple Michigan boys, not necessarily the final two ranked running backs, just those are the last two that I wrote up. I saved myself a little treat. I don't fully finish my grading on the last couple guys I'm going to have to write up until the time it's to do it. So that way I get to watch a little film, have it fresh in my mind. That way I'm not slogging through a write-up of the 25th best running back from notes taken a month and a half ago.
It is so hard to find the words to describe linebacker 25.
Right. So that's what I said. That's why I beat the system. I watch another game right before I write them up at that point, just so I have fresh stuff in my mind, and rather than trying to rely on what happened before. Because, I'm not gonna lie, linebacker 25. You do that guy doesn't hold a lot of brain space back here. That guy gets forgotten for a minute.
Well, there's only so many ways that you can say, hey, might have ability as a insert position specific to the linebacker spot, like Will, Mike, or Sam. Also has potential to be a high quality special teams player, because that's what especially when you're talking about for me, it's like the linebackers. It's like the day three linebackers. It's like. It's there's only so many ways you can talk about special teams, but as of today, so if you're listening to this live, if you're watching this live, we are 1 month from the NFL draft, because the NFL draft starts on the 24th of April, so that's very exciting. By the way, KCSN draft guide will be releasing here in a couple weeks. Planning on April 7th. There's an outside shot. We move that up. We're still looking at that a little bit. There's a chance we move that up a little bit. We'll see how things go. But currently planning on launching April 7th. You get 300 pages of Chiefs specific draft content. You get 225 write-ups on prospects and how they fit the Chiefs. And we are doing Matty Lane is absolutely killing it. Getting all his work done, fitting everything within a page. You are
sure. How's that going?
Way, good.
Okay, that's impressive.
Seriously, I haven't had to change fonts once.
That's impressive, because I definitely wrote some up to 523 words, and I was told 525 was the hard out.
Do you know who's pushing the limits the most this year?
Hicks.
Eisen. Zach Eisen.
Okay. Yeah, no, listen, I specifically ask, what is the max it can be? And you always give me all these other parameters, like this section can be this, and this section is this, and no, final top end, what can it be? And this year you finally told me 525, no more. And I said, perfect. Everything will come in at 525 or less.
And you have, and I'm very proud of you.
I have.
And it fit tremendously on one page, and I'm very, very, very proud of you. But that's not why you guys are here. We aren't here to have a KCSN draft guide meeting. We are here to talk about a variety of things, including some big news that has happened since we last talked on this program. Some defensive line news, Maddie. Charles Omenihu is back with the Kansas City Chiefs, the former Texas product, the former Houston Texan, former San Francisco 49er, and one-time Super Bowl champion Charles Omenihu back with the Kansas City Chiefs. 1 year deal worth up to $7 million. I'm not sure I've seen any real figures on that deal yet, so we don't even know entirely how that thing plays out. But I I mean, we didn't do a breaking news team because it happened during the tournament, like on Friday night at like 11 o'clock. But what were your thoughts on the Chiefs bringing Charles Omenihu back?
Obviously, right? Like we got this deep into free agency. You started to see the injury prone guys plus the deep veterans that like you started to see every type of defensive end edge rusher coming off the board in free agency. And every time you go look at any tracker, and I understand that Charles Omenihu maybe wasn't ranked super highly because he had the injury he was coming off of. He only played portion of a year, so the production wasn't great. But you looked at any available free agency list, his name for Chiefs fans that were familiar with what he did sticks out like, a sore thumb. Like you very clearly is like, oh, that guy's on a different level than the rest of these guys. So when I saw Dante Fowler and Azeez Ojulari get signed a little bit earlier, and he was the only guy left for a couple days, is pretty clear that his market wasn't what he wanted. It was pretty clear he was taking a 1-year deal somewhere to prove what he can do. And it essentially comes down to, well, is he going to, in my mind, was he going to want to go back to San Francisco or a similar coaching staff that he has familiarity with to try to earn that money? Or is he going to come back to Kansas City with a chance to earn that money? And I think if you start, looking at those kind of rosters of coaches that he's worked with, the most direct path to playing time for a healthy Charles Omenihu is in Kansas City, because there's not really anybody stopping him from playing opposite of George Karlaftis a full starters level amount of snaps. So it just made all the sense in the world. I understand why it took a while, because the Chiefs drew a hard line in the sand. He wanted more, which more power to him, and hopefully he gets more after this year. But I'm glad they brought him back. It just, it was pretty inevitable to me.
Yeah, I think that's an approach that the Chiefs have, typically taken, is pretty hard lines, right? Like they're pretty disciplined in their approach to free agency. They might make a couple exceptions and make a couple aggressive moves, but I mean, you hear that the Chiefs are involved with players, but only to a certain number. And Chiefs have kind of slow played that defensive line a little bit here, right? And they've kind of made some moves in recent memory in the last couple weeks, last week or so, to kind of really bolster that. You get Charles Omenihu back, and I think I'm with you. I think the longer that Omenihu was out there, the likelihood that he was going to be back in Kansas City, I think, increased, day over day, just because like I think he was hoping to find something, and his last couple of years were tough because, he missed 6 games due to suspension when he first signed with the Chiefs. And then he comes back, plays fantastic in 2023, and then, hurts himself in the AFC Championship game, and then has only a partial year of production this year. And so, I think it made a lot of sense for Omenihu to come back here. I think this is the right spot for him. And you talked about it, right? You've got George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and Charles Omenihu. You're running the edge room back at this point. Like that's what this is. The Chiefs are running the edge room back.
There's a lot of rooms.
There's a lot of places for, there's a lot of opportunities for, I think, that edge room to improve in the draft. Same with a position we're going to talk about in a second, but the D line's intact, the continuity's intact with this defense too. I'm trying to think, they lost Justin Reed, and outside of that, I mean, they bring Christian Fulton in, and outside of that, there's a lot of pieces back on the defensive side of the football. So hopefully they're able to figure some things out to help bolster that with additional players through the draft. But I like where that, I feel a lot better about where that edge room is sitting today, even though I'd like to see a little bit more juice there. How big of an edge position, in edge investment would satisfy you for this draft? If the Chiefs go and add a draft pick, what would the pick be that would make you happy? You can throw a player to it if you want to.
I mean, like if I'm gonna be happy, you might as well have one of those big freaky edges from Texas A&M or Georgia, and Mykal Williams or Shamar Stewart fall to pick 31 for some reason, right? But like, I don't. It doesn't have to be a specific, I guess, investment. I don't think the Charles Omenihu move changes anything that I feel about the Chiefs draft plans. I do think, kind of like we've talked about with some other positions, it might remove the need to get someone that can play on day one. I don't think they need an edge rusher to play on day one. So if you want to take somebody on day two that's a little bit more, not necessarily a project, but somebody that needs a little bit more time, like UCLA's Femi Oladeja, you want to take him on day two now because he might not be ready on day one. An off-ball linebacker convert to defensive end, he might need a year or two in the NFL before he's ready to play. He now makes a lot more sense though, because there's zero pressure for him to see the field right now. Whereas before this signing, if you didn't have Omenihu, you probably needed to draft someone to come in and play some snaps. You needed somebody to come in and at bare minimum eat snaps, especially if Felix doesn't take another step forward. So I think this move kind of protects them a little bit. It gives them a little bit more flexibility. I still would like to see an edge rusher in the top 100, but I also want to see a defensive tackle. I also want to see a wide receiver, a running back, a tight end. There's so many positions where safety, so many positions that I think they need to, that I would be very happy with them adding a player at. So I like the move from that aspect to kind of protects them a little bit.
Good news: the Chiefs have 4 top 100 picks in the upcoming NFL draft.
Yeah,
I will say, give me. I'm gonna throw you a scenario here with the 95th pick in the 2025 NFL draft. The Kansas City Chiefs select Elijah Roberts, the defensive end out of SMU. How do you feel?
I feel. I mean, I guess I would have to see what was available, but like generally speaking, I feel all right with that. I think I have him as a 4th round grade, but it's a pretty high 4th round grade. So it's a little bit higher than where I currently have him graded, but I do think his versatility and just kind of like the way looking through this edge class and the way this defensive draft like stacks up, I don't know if you can wait and snag him on day 3. He's a guy that starting this process, sure, but the more and more stuff that comes out, he feels like a guy with that versatility that might go earlier. So like I'm not mad at it, even though I don't know if I love the value at 95.
You sound like you're about to ask a question to me right before.
I liked your question better, but
well then that's fine. We're gonna take a break and we'll be back right after this.
Maybe to catch him.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Charles Omenihu wasn't the only move that the Chiefs made at the defensive line position.
You asked me if I had a question for you. I said yes. I just acknowledged that yours was better. I had a question for you. You then cut me off and go to break. You try to catch Tucker mid-bite of food, so the break is late. We come back, and you won't even let me ask my question. You are a tyrant.
Mine was better. Why would we move? Why would we ask an inferior question?
You are a tyrant.
I don't get why we would even. I don't even get why we would care.
Omenihu has never played more than 57% of the defensive snaps in a year in the NFL. That was last year. Granted, he only played 6 games, so that adjusts, the percentage of snaps. But still, he has only ever played 57% of his snaps. Does he play a higher percentage of snaps this year for the Kansas City Chiefs than he ever has in his career?
You said he's never played more than 57 in his entire career, any spot, any stop ever.
Correct. And he has played essentially a full season and 2 of his seasons with Houston. And then also in the year he was traded from Houston to a blank team, I assume San Francisco.
I am going to
Then he played all 17 games for San Francisco. Then 11 for the Chiefs because of a suspension, and then 6 last year because of the injury. So he's been relatively healthy besides last year. I know there was a suspension, but again, never higher than 57% of the snaps. So higher or lower this year.
I'm going to go higher.
Okay.
I'm going to go higher slightly. I think
Okay.
that's a pretty good number, and I'm just kind of looking at some of the playoff snaps relative to, I mean, very very consistent with what he did during the regular season last year. He played 57% of the snaps, rounding up during the regular season. Played 57% of the snaps, rounding up in the playoffs, but just like a very small decimal change in snap. The only reason I say that is maybe they kick him inside even a little bit more in some of these rush situations because they don't have Tershawn Wharton right now, or anyone to directly replace him unless Jerry Tillery somehow finally figures it out. So I could see an opportunity for the door to open a little bit more for Omenihu to play and kick inside a little bit more and rush from the inside and get himself on the field a little bit more. So I think I'll go over, but barely.
Yeah. So where do you think the snaps come from? Mike Dana losing snaps, Felix getting less.
I think
George
there's a little bit of that, and then like a little bit of like maybe they're rushing him where they would have rushed Turk. You know, so the NASCAR, the true NASCAR package, something like that. I think. So
I was just looking because I was looking at Dana snaps. They went from 38% to 48% to 54 to 74 in 2023. So he was like on a steady increase, a snap percentage, which 74% of snaps for Mike Dana is a lot of snaps for Mike Dana. It dropped down a little bit last year. They won a
Super Bowl that year though at 74. That's
Well, yes. I mean, you pick a year they probably could have won a Super Bowl, but and so last year it did take a drop back to 58%, but he was dealing with the injury. I'm curious because I do think for the Chiefs, it's a big thing. The Chiefs 4-man pass rush is a big hot topic all the time. And like, it seems like sometimes it gets under talked about because Chris Jones can be so good and Spags does all this other stuff, but their 4-man pass rush is sometimes lacking. And I think a big part of it is, I mean, if Mike Dana is on the field for 3/4 of your snaps, that's going to be a pretty big limit to what your pass rushing ceiling can be with 4 guys on the field. He's just not a great pass rusher. And so just as much as Charles Omenihu can be out there matters. If he's only going to be a 50%, a half of the time player, maybe you got to go defensive end a little bit earlier to get that pass rush up still. If you think he can push and be the a true starter across from Karlaftis rather than the rotational guy behind Dana, then I think that gives you a little bit more leeway, at least for the first year.
Unrelated. I have a couple quick thoughts. So yesterday you sent us a video of you sticking your head in the ice in an ice.
Oh, I did do that. Yes.
In ice water. Like what's the guy's name that's doing it?
It starts with an A. Ashton something.
I don't know. Maddie did it, but I was too distracted by how full your beard is growing. You're really growing that thing out.
Ashton Hall is this fellow's name. Yeah, I actually have not shaved my beard since the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl or trimmed it or anything. Like we kept the neck a little down. It gets itchy, but I haven't done the actual beard.
Yeah, we're noticing that. Anyways, me and Cam also, my oldest, we stuck our head in ice water last night. We did it too. No video. But it was actually kind of refreshing. I might do it again. I'm not gonna lie.
It's amazing. Listen, we went into the pool in Texas and it was chilly. You guys were out of there as quick as you could be. I was just hanging out in there. I love a good cold tub. So like I had no qualms with the face in the ice water, but
that's because you're like constantly sweating too. Like you're always hot. Like it doesn't matter if it's 30 degrees in Las Vegas, Nevada, you're still sweating. So there's that. Sorry for the
another probably very sweaty fella was re-signed by the Chiefs, and I don't mean that as disrespect. I mean this as a sign of champions. Mike Pennell was also brought back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Another guy that plays along the defensive line. He is rejoining the Chiefs to play presumably next to Chris Jones as the starting nose tackle, where he has been, I guess, in like the most important spots the last couple of years. I don't know if he was technically the starter some of the time. Him and Derek Nottie kind of split it, but Mike Pennell, Tucker's not here to adjust our rundown. I'm sorry, fellas. Pennell's back. So what do we think? Thoughts on Mike Pennell coming back, Kent?
It make too much sense. And I feel like with both Omenihu and Pennell, it always felt like, they were coming back, and those were two moves that felt like they were always, like what they're always coming back, because Mike Pennell returned on a league minimum salary essentially last season. And it kind of just felt like that was where we were heading with this one too. And so it made way too much sense not to bring Mike Pennell back into the mix, especially when you kind of look at like, hey, when we're talking about, and we talk about this on the show a lot, like rolling a roster out week 1 the Chiefs needed more help along the interior at the nose position, right? And they have Marlon Tuipulotu and Siaki Ika in the mix there, but they don't have a guy that's played as many snaps as Mike Pennell has. And I think last year, you're right, you saw him just kind of continue to keep a roster spot, continue to keep that opportunity there. After he played late down the stretch for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl victory against the San Francisco 49ers and dominated and had a fantastic performance, and you just kind of bring him back, bring him on a league minimum deal. And I think it's the same thing. I'm anticipating you're looking at a vet minimum contract and a guy that's going to come in and do his job and play his role and be a steady presence along that interior. You're muted.
I hinted. I low teed. Yeah. And so I think it made a ton of sense like with the Omenihu thing, it made a ton of sense to bring Pennell back. Once Derek Nottie got signed to the Jets, once you saw he was leaving, I think it was only a matter of time before Pennell came back. A very, very unlikely scenario where the Chiefs going to lose both Derek Nottie and Mike Pennell during this stretch. So that kind of just locked it in that he was going to be back. And I probably think that was the right choice. He's a little bit older, so maybe on some level, Derek Nottie would make more sense long-term, but the Chiefs haven't treated either of those two guys like long-term solutions. They just signed them for 1 year at vet minimum, essentially, and let them roll out there, stop the run, and move on. And I think it's a viable strategy, as we've seen the last couple of years. Similar to some other moves, though, lately, I don't think this has any impact whatsoever. Like, if you're looking forward towards the draft or towards the future, Mike Pennell, while as long as he wants to play, you can probably pencil him in for a 1 year deal for the Chiefs for lifetime.
Yeah.
I also don't think that, he's the kind of guy in a situation where the Chiefs are relying on him year after year. He's just kind of like the fallback plan if they don't happen to have somebody else in that role that they want to pay more money to. So if we're looking ahead to the draft now, I don't think Pennell and Tillery combined coming in has any impact on what they might want to do at the defensive tackle position. They still haven't gotten a player that's as good as Tershawn Wharton, who they lost in free agency. They technically lost their second strings, sometimes starting nose tackle that split time with Pennell and Derek Nottie. Like, they still have plenty of gaps in that defensive tackle room. So I don't think this changed the math on anything necessarily. It was just, another good quality signing to bring back, shored up. That was the one position left, I guess, that we had said last week, hey, maybe they can't go out and play a game right now, right? Like, it's the one position that they hadn't filled whatsoever. They didn't really have a nose tackle. Now they do, and I guess the world is the oyster.
I think this team continues to operate, and I do think, don't get me wrong, like, this changes very easily with a draft pick, but I do think this team has tried to essentially say, hey, we're going to pay Chris Jones, and then we're going to have a bunch of just, guys like Mike Pennell, Derek Nottie, even Tershawn Wharton last year was on a smaller contract, just kind of around him. They're not going to invest a ton of money outside of Chris Jones along their interior. And that rung true yet again this offseason, because they signed a bunch of guys that are on league minimum or prove it type, deals and prove it type opportunities now.
Let's see. Let's see what they do. I think drafting a D tackle in first round, while the contract isn't huge, I think that counts as a big investment.
Yes.
So yes. I am intrigued to see if the Chris Jones and friends philosophy that has worked, and it has worked. I am curious to see if that rings true, because Chris Jones is getting older year by year, right? And last year, not that Chris Jones was bad, not that Chris Jones wasn't great, arguably the best defensive tackle in the NFL. Right now, what game did he take over last year? Can you give me a game that he took over?
Well, by pressures, no, I don't know.
Right. And I don't necessarily knock him. It's just like, before, it just feels like we might be at that point right now where Chris Jones can't take over any single game that he kind of chooses to. The situation has to be right for him. And if that's the case, I don't know if you can run the Chris Jones and friends approach as you get further and further into his 30s. So I think this is the year to branch away from that. They didn't financially. We will see what happens with a draft pick coming up. But I still wouldn't be surprised to see them invest early in a defensive tackle, round one early, just because Pennell, Jerry Tillery, Siaka Ika, that's not giving him a lot of help. I mean, we already talked about the edge room. It's not a bad edge room, but it's also the same one last year that by the end of the season, everybody was calling not good enough. So it's like, there's not a ton of help around Chris Jones as he gets older and older.
And I wasn't saying any of that to say that I didn't think the Chiefs would invest. I do think, like, essentially what they've done during the free agency period is exactly that, because there hasn't been, I don't even know if there's been $1 of, money exceeding the league vet minimum. that has gone to the interior of this defensive line if we're looking at contracts so far. But yeah, I think D tackle makes a ton of sense. And like, I think if you're setting yourself up for the draft, I think there's a decent chance that D tackle is great value where the Chiefs are picking at 31. And I think there's a couple of players bookmarked outside of that, and maybe we'll get into some of that when we talk about some of these tiers and the NFL draft tiers. But I don't know. I think there is a chance that good value is available to the Chiefs at 31 at the defensive tackle room. Maddie, I'm going to give you a number here. So Derek Noddy or Mike Pennell played 29.6% of the snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs this year.
This sounds like a great question.
Did Derek Noddy play higher or lower in percentage of snaps? And mind you, both of these players played every single game this season. Higher or lower, 29.6% of the snaps for Derek Noddy.
Okay. Let me finish this. I'm going to say Derek Noddy played higher, but I think as the year went, it skewed more and more towards Pennell. That's my gut feeling.
I think you're wrong on both. So
really, you think Derek Noddy played more towards the end of the year than he did to start the year? Maybe I could be wrong.
I think it looks like
Pennell.
Derek Noddy played about all. Actually, it's even worse than that, Maddie. The reason, so Derek Noddy played 20.4% of the snaps. He played 220. He played 221 snaps the entire year. But check this out: he played 47 of those snaps against Denver in Week 18. So even worse. Like Pennell played 23, but not even closed the gap in that Week 18 meaningless football game, which I find a little bit interesting. But it makes sense to bring Mike Pennell back, and I think we welcome with open arms. We're excited to see him. I will say one other thing about Pennell. He had more sacks. Like this. He had more sacks this year than he had in his entire career.
Pass rush specialist, some are saying.
The help is on the way for Chris Jones. Mike Pennell had 3 sacks this year. He had 2 the rest of his entire career. So
here's another. Okay, here you go. How many seasons has he had? He's been playing in the NFL since 2014. How many seasons has he had with more? He had 8 pressures this past year for the Chiefs. How many seasons has he had more than 8 pressures?
I guess it's going to be something ridiculous, like where he's pressured more than he's sacked in his career. He's had 4 seasons more than 8 pressures.
Only 2. He had 13 in 2018 and 14 in 2015. This man is steady.
Help's on the way, folks. The pass rush is solved. Mike Pennell is here to rack up those sacks. Anyways, moving on here a little bit. Chiefs also signed Robert Rochell, a cornerback from the Los Angeles Rams, a tier 1 cornerback athletic tester, mind you, from 2020 KCS and draft
2021.
2021. But a tier 1 cornerback athletic tester from the KCSN draft guide. Maddie Lane, first off, any takes on Robert Rochell? I have one take.
Yeah. Okay, I got a couple things here. I'm glad you talked about the tier 1 stuff, because there's a lot of tier 1 testers actually that year. Here we go. J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain II, Greg Newsome, Nate Hobbs, Eric Stokes, Robert Rochell, and then Afitu Melifonwu. Those were your tier 1 testers. Of those guys, it looks like, unfortunately, Rochell, he's probably the one out of that group that didn't hit the same way as those other athletes did, right? Like even Nate Hobbs for a day 3 pick played pretty well. Stokes, I know, has been injured, hasn't been great, but like you saw the talent early in his career. Melifonwu maybe hasn't lived up to the draft billing, but he's been a very useful defensive kind of player, chess piece to move around. So it does feel like, tier 1 CBAT, big, huge indicator of a player being good in the NFL. Craig does a ton of great work on it all the time. You can go back through all your KCS and draft guides and see all the hits. But when you're going to have, 8 guys there, one of them might not work out. And Rochell, so far in his career, has been the guy that hasn't worked out. That said, he's been phenomenal on special teams. That is where you see his athleticism really stand out. It doesn't show up necessarily as a corner, but he has been a good special teamer in the NFL because of the size, because of the length, the speed, and all that. So, not that it's a bad thing to be a good athlete. It's just notable that, man, being a tier 1 CBAT really does seem to hit. And the Chiefs went out and they're trying their hand at a veteran tier 1 CBAT. Maybe he plays better for the Chiefs. Maybe he doesn't. But worst case scenario, Tobe gets to be happy.
Yeah, because that's primarily where Robert Rochell played last season. So I said I had 1 point about Robert Rochell, and that 1 point is that he played 1 defensive snap for the Green Bay Packers last year. I think this is an interesting profile, like we talked about, athletically from the cornerback spot. Just hasn't found his footing at any of these real spots yet. Like, hasn't been able to earn consistent playing time on the defensive side of the football, but he provides value as a special teams player. Talking with some of our buddies over in Green Bay, they said he does provide, good value and was one of the better special teams players for the Packers last season. And now the Chiefs are going out and getting a guy that can fill the bottom of their roster at the cornerback spot, fits the profile of their cornerbacks that they like, and has tremendous special teams value as well. And I think that's really the root of it. That Robert Rochell's coming in to try to earn one of those bottom of the roster spots that's really tied more to special teams than it is necessarily the defensive side of the ball. That being said, he's going to get a chance to compete, and it's not like the cornerback room is just chock full. I mean, they lost Keith Taylor this last season. They lost Keith Taylor to the Atlanta Falcons. So some of these guys at the bottom of the roster, it's gettable. It's gettable for Robert Rochell to get on this roster and maybe even see some opportunities in limited capacity in a defense that should fit him well.
Okay, so I got one more question about Rochell, and then I have some larger cornerback stuff I want to talk about, I think, after the break. But we're gonna do a quick Rochell question here. Okay, who do we think that this says more about for the Chiefs? Like, who going forward should see this Robert Rochell signing and be like, maybe my spot on this roster isn't safe? And I'm going to start going through names, and you can just tell me. Trent McDuffie, okay, no. Jalen Watson, no. Christian Fulton, no. Okay, now Shamari Connor, since he played slot corner, no. Now's where things start to get interesting. Should Nazeeh Johnson feel worried at all about the signing of Robert Rochell?
No.
I think Nazeeh Johnson's locked in. Okay.
Yes.
I like it. I respect it.
They just signed him to a right of first refusal tender, which by the way, that's a lot of money. It's like $3 million.
So just $1 million.
They gave him not insignificant
I don't
money.
think it's guaranteed though.
But if he plays, it's $3 million.
Yeah.
So that's not nothing. So I think, I would say
that's 5. That's 5 that we've named so far. So we have Rochell is 6th at this point. Joshua Williams, should he be a little nervous?
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, they kind of know what they know about him, and they know enough to not really trust him all that much. And they didn't really play him unless they absolutely had to. And they just drafted another cornerback in Joshua Williams and Jalen, or they just signed another cornerback in Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson's contract year.
Yeah.
Like, they're not even super interested in seeing what Joshua Williams is going to do in a contract year. So why would I, Joshua Williams, probably. Yeah.
Christian Roland Wallace.
Probably. Yeah.
Probably. Now, we don't need to go further. And then here's the last one. Obviously he should be worried because he wasn't, on the 53-man roster last year. I think it's interesting that Robert Rochell and Darius Rush both now are going to share this team because I think both are big athletic corners who maybe don't play corner up to their athleticism, but should probably provide special teams value. So I just think it's interesting to have a Joshua Williams, Darius Rush, and then Robert Rochell all on the same roster, presumably fighting for one cornerback spot. It seems like we kind of boiled it down to. I don't know, just interesting little battle there for the back end of the cornerback room.
Yeah, it depends on how the Chiefs view Connor too. And where
he might move fully to the safety room, I guess.
Well, I think he was in the safety room as it was. So
only in spirit.
I think in seat as well. But yeah, I think it could be opened up a little bit more. But it's very Chiefsy to do, right? This is what they do. They go grab these kind of profiles like they did with Keith Taylor last year. And I think there was another cornerback they tried to do it with too. They tried it with Lonnie Johnson and all these other players.
And Darius Rush came in last year. Then he got put on the practice squad or waived, and then he came back. Was he a tier 1 C-back? He might have been pretty darn close.
I don't think he was. I don't think.
Well, he's like 6'2", ran a 4.36 with like 33.5-inch arms though. That's a big boy that's moving.
Maybe they did. Maybe they did. But yeah, this is what they do. This is what the Chiefs do a lot of times when it comes to like their 90-man roster construction. They love to give themselves some swings on former high picks, former draft picks with, the kind of profile that they like. And like they got some contribution out of Keith Taylor from doing that. So I don't think it's all that surprising. Did we take the break we were supposed to take? I don't know.
I said it was coming up. I teased the break.
And then it was like 10 minutes later. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Really do appreciate everyone listening to the KC Laboratory on a Monday or whenever you're listening. But we do really appreciate all your support and all your support of KC Sports Network too. So thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate that. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the cornerback position today, Maddie. It seemed like you might have had a lot on your mind. Was it built just about the Robert Rochell experience, or do you have more in your head beyond just that?
I think we talked about the Christian Fulton signing, and we talked about that we liked it and things that it might impact. I don't know if we gave it a full-on discussion between signing Christian Fulton and moving on from Justin Reed. Do we think there might be an adjustment to what the Chiefs do from a base coverage standpoint? As in, do we think they go play more even more man coverage now? Right? You're improving the cornerback room, presumably with Fulton playing over Najee Johnson or Joshua Williams. You're probably taking a step back in the safety room without Justin Reed. You probably lose the ability to be as versatile without having, Justin Reed calling the shots, moving everybody around from the middle of the field playing safety. I just wondered, not necessarily simplifying the defense, but do we think they get back to playing more true man coverage now because of the reps, the types of corners they have, McDuffie in the slot, two outside kind of physical man coverage corners? Do we think it stays the same? Do we think that their moves this offseason indicate a change coming to their main base coverages? I think.
Do we know the splits? Do you have the splits between 2023 and 2024 man coverage?
If you talk for long enough, yes, but
well, because I think there's two lines of thinking, right? And I think do the Chiefs want to return to having the stability that they had in the cornerback room from 2023? They're not going to be able to have a L'Jarius Sneed level player there, but they invested a decent little amount of money to improve their cornerback position from what they had last year, even though, like I said, it's essentially a contract year for Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams. Yes, I know Trent McDuffie has the 5th-year tag, which is probably going to get used unless they come to an agreement. Maybe they'll use it anyway and then figure the agreement out. But the Chiefs, I think, have seen enough of that group to say we need more. And they gave Watson Williams an opportunity to take a step. And if I think they were satisfied with what they had at the cornerback position, then I don't think Christian Fulton's here. But Joshua Williams largely disappointed. Jalen Watson had a very good season, but was also hurt. And I think getting someone alongside Watson and getting someone across from him with Fulton, giving them the flexibility and ability to do what they want with Trent McDuffie, I think is huge. And it speaks more to what they had in 2023 when that defense was a lot more dynamic and when they could move some stuff around and they had a little bit more of that flexibility and still had, that was year 2 for that vaunted draft class in 2022. So I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's specifically for man coverage or just because they liked what they had when they had better cornerback play across the board in 2023. So I don't know. What were the splits?
So I'm just trying to piece it all together here. It looks like the Chiefs in general only saw about a drop in man coverage versus zone coverage. And this doesn't split it up into man match, zone match stuff. And I know the Chiefs don't run a lot of static zone, so it gets a little hairy, but it looks like the Chiefs only saw a drop in about 4% from like man coverage reps from 2023 to 2024. So not a significant amount, but what I do think is noticeable, they also went up in cover 0 last year. So when they did play man coverage, it went from 4% in 2023 to 7% in 2024. So it's not a ton. We're not dealing with a ton of reps there, but it does seem like they are eating they ate more man reps while sending the house last year than they did in 2023, which I think, it says that they didn't want quarterbacks having the chance to hold the ball when they did want to play man coverage. It's kind of like what that might tip me off to. They felt a little bit more comfortable covering for longer periods of time when they had Snead to play along with McDuffie and then that rotating third corner. They said, hey, we can just straight up play cover 1. We can play double brackets where we just bracket 2 receivers and we trust whoever's else to figure it out. They did a lot of that when Snead was still here. They would just use 2 safeties to bracket. It would be Snead or McDuffie one-on-one, and 2 outside or 2 other receivers would be double teamed essentially. So I just wonder if we see a slight trend back to some more man cover heavy stuff because they have the bodies that can do it now. And then they lost the communication. Like, not that necessarily man coverage takes less communication than zone, but it does. I mean, like, we don't have this players. Like, it takes a little bit less, especially the way Spags runs it, where you might have a nickel corner that's dropping to the opposite deep half and stuff like that. Without Justin Reed, did they maybe feel more comfortable just being a little bit more, not simple, but streamlined in how they go through these calls? It might be easier to say, hey, we're just going to play 2-man on this play versus trying to get through an entire process of all the checks and calls. So I'm just curious to see what that does, because I do think Fulton and Watson on the outside plus McDuffie in the slot, these would be pretty good, like 1 through 3 matchup wise against a lot of teams' wide receivers. And then now you have your safeties to have a little bit more freedom to help or to blitz or to do whatever you want to do versus just being the communication hub that Justin Reed was.
I think it's an interesting premise, and I do, I wonder if the Chiefs want to try to keep the quarterback holding the ball a tick longer for that pass rush too. Like, if they thought they might have missed something a little bit there too, and like they feel like they can get a little bit better at corner, like that's going to help them solve some of that problem as well. It's like it's a whole piece of it's a whole picture, right, that they're trying to navigate. I would say, Matty, you would say that the defensive talent at this point before the NFL draft is worse on the defensive side of the ball than it was last year, though.
Oh boy,
it's out as Reed, it's out as Reed, out is Wharton, in is Fulton is essentially what it is.
And in is Tillery. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close because I'm weighing the fact that I do think that Hicks is going to continue to develop and get better. Mm-hmm. So the gap from Reed to Hicks right now is probably pretty significant. By the end of the year, it might not be as much. But yeah, I would say entering the year, you've lost a little bit of talent defensively, but kicking Trent McDuffie inside and just not having Najee Johnson on the field, or Najee and Shamari Connor, or Shamari Connor and Joshua Williams on the field at the same time, you might mask the lack of talent just by moving somebody inside. So I don't know. At the end of the day, it might be pretty even just because of the way you get to move guys around.
I underestimated you. I thought you were going to say it was a lot worse and all this stuff. Like, I'm not going to lie.
I think player to player, if I were to list them out, definitely. But like, as I was talking, I'm like, well, you're getting rid of the biggest weakness the Chiefs had, was that they had 2 guys with big targets on their back on the field last year. They don't have that now. They got both of those guys off the field by adding Fulton, which moves McDuffie inside. Yes, I do think that, it's a pretty significant step back right now going from Justin Reed to Jaden Hicks, but I just wonder if you can't work through that. Now, you can ask me if I'm worried about, Brian Cook, and I'll say yes, but, he was there last year. So
yeah, I'm glad that you acknowledged the developmental arc of Jaden Hicks, because I do think that's one of the pieces to this that is missing a little bit, right? He looked really good. He earned more time as the season went on and started playing a little bit more and more, and played well. And I don't know, it wasn't a like for like role with Justin Reed necessarily, but man, I was excited about Jaden Hicks. I think part of the reason the Chiefs felt comfortable signing a cornerback and moving on from Justin Reed is because of what we're about to see, Jaden Hicks take a step. So I'm optimistic on the Jaden Hicks side. And if that's the case, like, this defense is in great shape if Jaden Hicks, does make strides in 2025, which I think he has every bit of the ability to do. Wanted to talk a little bit about the NFL draft just before we got out of here, because we love the NFL draft and it's literally a month away.
Says.
It kind of feels like things are starting to ramp up a little bit, right? Like you kind of starting to feel it. You're starting to see some of the articles be more draft centered than free agency centered. You're kind of seeing some things that, like it seems like the calendar is starting to turn a little bit, which is exciting for us because, we love the NFL draft. Also,
silence me for so long.
Yeah. This is your 1 month to shine, Matthew.
We're not even there yet.
You grew a draft beard. That's what it was. By the way, link is in the description of the show for
the draft beard. For the draft guide,
the KCSN draft beard. I'll do this. Promo code beard gets you $1 off. I'll go work on that right now. Maddie, while I do that, why don't you explain what you wanted to do with NFL draft tiers?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we do every year. And we're going to try to squish it into the back half of a show. So Kid's going to be so upset when this takes this long.
We can just save it for another time too. Let's just do a small part of it. How about that?
I don't know if you can do a small part of it. This is a big adventure here. Would you rather do a quick, would you rather instead on the fly and save this for another day to do the tiers in a different day? The tiers is a longer show usually. Or not. I bet we can get through it quick.
How many tiers did you want to go through?
Oh, it's just like it's just like 3. We're essentially breaking down round 1 into guys that will be gone, guys that are probably gone versus guys that we think the Chiefs will be choosing between. We just usually make a whole show out of this.
We
let's
get
a notebook out.
Serious. Let's do it.
Okay.
By the way, promo code beard is active. So if you want to go use promo code beard, you'll get $1 off the KCSN draft guide.
This is what happens when you're late to the start of the show. We don't get to talk about this beforehand, Kent. Abdul Carter, off the board. Gone. Mason Graham.
Gone.
Ashton Genty.
Gone.
Will Johnson.
Gone.
For sure. Even not running at all. He's a 4.7 athlete.
Yes, tape is very good. Okay. And people will look at 2023 tape and say, nah. But Will Johnson would be one of my hope he falls, but he's gone.
Okay, but you say gone, not even probably gone. He's gone. Okay.
I think he's gone.
Travis Hunter.
Gone.
Will Campbell.
Gone.
Jihad Campbell, dealing with a shoulder injury that required surgery and playing linebacker.
Not a slam dunk that he's gone. Because he's a linebacker out of Alabama. By the way, maybe give the people the positions too, because some people don't always know the positions.
Fine. Yeah,
I've heard complaints about draft coverage for 7 years, and one of them is name position school. I'm just saying.
I understand.
Jihad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, is a likely gone, but there's maybe he might be there. He could be one that falls.
Probably. Okay, so are we saying 50-50 or probably gone? I want
probably.
Two different.
Probably higher than 50.
All right. Right tackle from Missouri, but maybe can play left tackle in the NFL, Armand Mimbo.
Gone. So
gone. Okay. Defensive tackle, formerly from Texas A&M, transferred to Ole Miss, Walter Nolan. 50-50, right?
I think he's a 50-50 guy. But it has nothing to do with the tape. There's other questions about Walter Nolan that are
there's
not
character
tape
stuff.
related.
There's character stuff floating out there, but nobody has anything solid on what it is. So it's a matter of is this the offensive tackle from Georgia that flamed out for the Tennessee Titans they took in round 1, Isaiah Wilson? Yep. Or is this Kayvon Thibodeau, where it was the same stuff? Everybody had these concerns and they might fall. One did fall and he stunk. One didn't fall. And but now that Thibodeau's been perfect or great, but he's been a very good NFL player. So I don't know where the NFL is on him right now. And all it takes is one team to say we're not going to let him fall. But right now, I'm with you. 50-50 sounds right. Safety, Georgia, Malachi Starks.
Probably gone.
Probably, you think so?
I think he's a Minnesota Viking at pick 24.
Okay, I would have 50-50'd him, but that's okay. We can rip him there. You can't be wrong. This is better to be safe. It's better to say later than earlier for this exercise. Jahdae Barron, cornerback,
gone.
Texas. Gone. I'm going. Yeah, okay, we can go gone.
Gone.
I think people like
gone.
Short arms and all.
Like
Jalen Walker, positionless player from Georgia.
Gone.
Okay. Omarion Hampton, running back from North Carolina.
You want a spicy take?
Yeah.
I think he's gone.
Gone. I'm going probably gone. I'm going to save us from the embarrassment of being very wrong about that one and say probably gone. just to give there a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
You're being, Shamar Stewart, defensive end from Texas A&M.
Probably gone.
Mykel Williams, defensive end, Georgia.
50-50.
50-50. Oh, you got him below Stewart. Okay.
It just seems like there's not as much love for Mykel Williams out there. There's questions about the tape. There's questions about the overall athleticism.
Yeah.
He was built in a lab to be a Steve Spagnuolo defensive end. And so if he is there at pick 31, I would sprint and I will be doing backflips in the hills of Missouri at Holiday Distillery. If the Chiefs are able to get Mykel Williams at pick 31.
Okay. I mean, hey, listen, I am here for that. I like that. I would very much enjoy that. Okay. Taking a quick pause. Cam Ward, gone. Shador,
Gone.
Sanders, gone.
Yep.
Jackson Dart,
Not gone.
50-50.
No, listen, I don't think it's 50-50.
50-50. I think there's a chance he can go in round one. So, okay. I just want to get some quarterback in the way.
Who's taking him?
See, you're going to get us on a tangent here. What are the Pittsburgh Steelers doing at quarterback if they don't land Aaron Rodgers?
Jackson Dart.
Okay.
Boy, howdy, man. I hate that. I don't know.
Tyler
dude.
Warren, tight end from Penn State.
Gone.
Colson Loveland, tight end from Michigan, dealing with a shoulder injury. Probably gone. Okay, there we go. Tyler Booker, interior offensive lineman from Alabama with one of the historically terrible RAS scores, but yet very good film, and sounds like, according to every analyst, that teams love him.
Probably gone.
Yep.
Probably gone.
Okay. Teteroa McMillan.
Gone.
Joshua Simmons, offensive tackle from Ohio State.
I'm going to go 50-50. I don't think anybody knows great about the medicals. If the medical's clear, he's gone. If the medicals are dicey, he might be there.
Okay. So see, I feel like normally when we do this exercise, I feel like we get a lot deeper down in the weeds before we start to get, I think everybody else from here is pretty much going to be 50-50. So I'm going to end the exercise.
I don't know about that.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll keep going. Mike Green, edge from Marshall.
Gone.
With the off-field stuff? Okay.
I don't. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't
Some
see
spicy off-field stuff there.
I don't think Mike Green is seeing the same kind of questions about his draft stock with people like Daniel Jeremiah, the way that some of these other guys are. And so they're in multiple years removed from it. So like, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm saying this is what I think. It feels like the tape is winning in this scenario, and maybe his name's cleared or something, but it just doesn't feel like the sizzle around Mike Green is the same as some of the other guys with questions.
I only have two other guys that I think could even see competing for gone at this point in time. Kenneth Grant.
I probably gone. I think he's more than 50-50. Yep.
Matthew Golden.
I think probably gone.
I would agree. I mean, did you have other people that you think are like probably gone and not just 50-50s from here on out?
James Pierce, I think, is leaning probably gone.
Ooh, okay. See, here I was going 50-50 because unlike he's got also off-field stuff, and unlike Mike Green, I do feel like his mock draft location has been more impacted as of late. He is almost routinely available in the late 20s. I think he's a 50-50er, I guess, where I'm going with that.
I'll hear it. I'll hear the argument.
So like just to simplify it at this point, like unless you have somebody, if you have somebody else, throw them in there. But I just want to kind of like. So that puts us at 14 players, 14 players that we said are gone, that the Chiefs have no chance to really draft. Only about 8 players that we said are probably gone. Mm-hmm. But like, I mean, what does that put us at 22-ish? That's not a lot. That's not a lot of guys off the board, right? And you can rank those 22 guys however you want. Just like normally when we do this, though, we get a little bit deeper into it. I think we end up normally with a high, mid to high 20s. The Chiefs are always picking 31, 32 anyway. It feels like every year we do this, we get a lot farther down before we start getting to 50-50 guys. Because like we're at 50-50 and we still got, James Pierce I put there, Siobhan Revelle, the cornerback from ECU, who a lot of people really liked, Luther Burden, wide receiver from Missouri, essentially take your pick of any running back that hasn't been mentioned yet. Nick Scorton, defensive end out of Texas A&M. If you wanted to go corner, Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, like there seems to be a fair amount of talent still on the board that could go before the Chiefs. I'm not saying the Chiefs will have a chance for all these guys. We just have a handful of guys that I think we're saying are like, they might be there, and a bigger handful of guys than typical. And I think that kind of goes to show this draft class, weak, strong doesn't matter. I think there's just a big group of players that are kind of in this same range that it's really hard to separate them outside of the top 5-ish guys.
I would say if you like, even just kind of looking through like some of our rankings right now, I'd say, I think how you have players like 20 to 50 is going to change a lot. If you look board to board. So like our board's going to be a little bit different than somebody else's, we're, that's what's interesting about this class is like, and like, I think there's been a few of those classes recently where it feels like, like that 20 to 50 range is all over the map. And like some guys could go higher or lower based on just about anything. Right. So like we have Azariah Thomas, the cornerback out of Florida State. He's listed as he's our 38th ranked player right now. But there's plenty of talk that he'll wind up somewhere. I've seen him mocked into the 20s. Now he just ran slower today, but in his pro day. But from a tape,
I think a great day to run slow because everybody forgot about him and started talking about Xavier Restrepo. So
I didn't forget. But I think you're going to see like where people are going to be all over the map. I think in that 20 to 50 range, and like I think this is going to be an interesting draft from that perspective. One name, like for instance, we're a little bit lower on Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle out of Texas, but there's people that have Banks as high as the teens in some drafts. So we're going to be I think he's going to wind up somewhere in the 40s for us.
Yeah, I mean we're lower on Nick Emenwari from South Carolina, and there's a chance that he's gone before. I would almost even put him in the probably gone before the Chiefs bucket, almost. But like,
interesting.
Probably. I don't think he should go there. I think there's been way too much hype about him even leading into the combine before we saw the testing numbers. And then like since the combine, you think a guy that tests that freaky is just getting a combine bump. But again, people were pushing him up before that. And unless it was just everyone trying to be early, it seemed like the hype was building that way. I've seen enough people talk about him being like the new safety one over Starks. Like that's why I was saying like I don't know if Starks is for sure gone, but yeah, he could work. He's just another guy though. Like him, Thomas, you mentioned Kelvin Banks. Like those are 3 guys that we're all a little bit lower on that I could see being gone, but like I wouldn't bet on them being gone. So like it's a weird 50-50 proposition. Like you said, pick 20, player 20, not pick player 20, maybe even player 15 on. I do think a lot of people's boards are going to be teams, evaluators, people doing this on the internet, Daniel Jeremiah's, Dane Brugler's, like everyone's going to be so wild in that range because this draft class is so even. Like all those players are just so even for a while. And it becomes, do you like the fast bendy guy? Or do you like the big strong guy? Or do you like the guy that has tapped potential? Or do you like the guy that's been steady for 4 years in college? So what do you like is altering, I think, your grades a lot more this year because everybody's so closely bunched together.
I'm so fascinated to see what this draft looks like when it's all said and done. I can't wait to see what the Chiefs do and how they approach it. Like there's so much that we have to talk about with the NFL draft over the next month. We can't wait for it. We're beyond excited. This is our favorite time of year to talk. It's so much fun. I can't wait. And I'm looking forward to it. And we'll be here at KC Sports Network breaking down all things draft. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory, though. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later. Derek Harmon.